Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk about the best ways to achieve your goals or your dreams even, and I've even got my cat in the background staring into your soul, so to make sure you're listening. So I'm just going to get straight into the video. Now, I saw something on another channel called Nate O'Brien. He's actually a personal finance YouTuber in America. He's now since kind of moved away from the platform, but this was where I initially got this idea from, and I just want to kind of develop on it. So I think the best way to achieve your goal is to actually work backwards, okay? And what do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, you want to buy a house and that's your number one goal in your life. The best way to kind of look into this is like, what kind of house do you want? Where do you want to live? Really imagine yourself in the future living in that house and how you want your life to be. So yes, it is a bit of like visualization sense, but I don't mean just to visualize it. There's obviously like steps to get there, which I'm going to talk about. So imagine the kind of life that you want in the future and then work backwards to break it down into how you'll actually achieve them. So if we stick with that example of wanting to buy a house in the age of 30, let's say, and let's say you're 20 now, so you've got 10 years to reach this goal, okay? If you visualize the type of house that you want, let's say it's a 3-bedroom house in the countryside, in the UK, wherever you are in the world, everyone has different dreams, okay? And maybe that type of house, you've done your research and it's about £300,000, okay? So it's important to understand the numbers of how to get there. In the UK and Ireland anyway, the majority of people will have a 10% deposit for a house. So in this example, if you really want this 3-bedroom house in the countryside and it's achievable for you, hopefully on your salary, 10% of 300 is 30 grand, okay? And maybe there's 2 people in a couple here that are buying into a mortgage together. So that would mean 15 grand for each person that they need to save, okay? So you're breaking it down of how to actionably, is that a word? Do this. So if there's 2 of you, £15,000 over the next 10 years if you're 20 and you want to buy it by the age of 30, which is, what would that be, 1,500 every year per person for the next 10 years. And that seems very achievable. A lot of people would be able to save a couple of £100 a month over the next few years for that sort of goal. But when you initially have it in your mind of, oh my God, I want a house, and oh my God, cost of living is so expensive, how am I ever going to get there? A lot of people get so bogged down and focused on how am I ever going to achieve it rather than work backwards. Really understand the type of home that you want, where you want to live in the world if that's the goal, and break it down into more bite-sized pieces. And when you work backwards and you're able to have like actionable goals and actionable chapters of achieving those goals, then it's a lot more, straightforward and a lot more manageable, I find. So for example, maybe you want to get into exercise more. And maybe your initial goal in your head is, I just want to be fitter as a person, right? That's not very actionable, because what does being more fit look like to you? It might be different to you than another person, and you haven't really put any actionable things on top of that. So instead you could say, I want to go to yoga class 3 days a week and I want to be able to do a headstand by this time next year. Okay, that's an actionable thing. You're able to say when you actually get to go to the classes, and if there's like an achievable goal at the end of that, you want to do a handstand. Okay, that is the goal for you. In terms of money, of course, this can be, you want to buy a house, but how much is that house? Break it down. Or maybe it's something like, even something frivolous, like you want to go to the Maldives. And that's been your goal since a young child, and that's okay, because that sounds really cool to me, right? But how much is that trip going to cost? Do your research. The flights are incredibly expensive. It's usually multiple airports you have to go to, depending on what part of the world you're in, of course. Accommodation, food. So kind of, if that's your goal, have a number in mind, but make sure it's realistic. There's no point saying to yourself, if you live in London and your goal is to go to the Maldives in 2 years' time, and you're saying, oh, it'll cost £1,000, I assure you it's going to cost way, way, way more than that. So having research, having actionable goals of breaking money down into how much you would need to save for these kind of goals. Yes, they can be frivolous, or they can be more serious, like the property one. Or maybe it's a wedding, you know, maybe you're in a committed relationship. He hasn't popped the question, but you as a person would love to get married in a few years' time, whenever that may be. There's no harm in having little pots and having separate accounts to have these goals that you can put money into, because anytime when you get like a bonus from work, or maybe you get tax back, that happens sometimes. It happened to me where I got like £900 back for no reason off HMRC, which was amazing. So little kind of surprise things like that. If you have this like goal bank account and this goal bucket of money in, it can be a separate bank account, you can totally just start putting money in there. And when you know you've hit a goal, like the house goal of reaching 30k deposit, like that's amazing. You know that you can then achieve that goal, because that would be the next step then, would be to, you know, make sure you've got obviously the credit and get a mortgage approved and everything else. But I think where people fall down is they are very negative sometimes and lean on the side of, I can't do this, how am I going to do this, rather than saying, yes, you can do this, how can I get to that point? So the best ways to kind of make sure you get to that goal is to track it. So you could have an accountability partner. So if you're in a relationship, or if you've got a best friend nearby, you can tell them what your goal is. So if you want to go to yoga 3 days a week and you want to do a headstand by this time next year, you know, let them know that goal, and then they can check in with you to say, okay, it's a Wednesday, have you been once to your class already? It's a Friday, have you been twice? You know, it's the end of the week, you know, make sure you get the 3rd class in. And similarly with money, like people are so afraid to talk about money, but if you've got someone there that, you know, maybe it's your best friend, and then, you know, you're going out for drinks and you're spending a lot of money, if you've got a best friend there that is your friend, you know, and they might nudge you and say, hey, aren't you trying to save for a house? Hey, maybe next time we can just stay in and like do a board games or watch movies, you know, to help save, you know, for your goal. Because there are people around you that will help you in this way, and you shouldn't be ashamed to talk about money, especially when they're, you know, such normal goals to have, such as like getting property. And another way to track, you know, how to get to this goal would also be just to track it in a notebook. Like literally get yourself a journal, you know, literally have a little kind of timetable written out for yourself to be like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I want to do these days for yoga. I know that I work from home in these days, so it's achievable to do them. Or even with the money, you know, track it that way, to be like every month I need to save £200 to reach my goal in 10 years. And, you know, once you tick it, it's so satisfying to be like, yep, this month I saved £300, I saved more than what I initially budgeted. And you get to tick it off every month or every week, depending on what the goal is. And when you visually see that, you know, in a notebook, or you could have it like even on your wall as like a pinnacled mood board, you know, goal. Once you get to, you know, tick off these chapters of reaching that goal, it'll feel a lot more achievable. Like you're able to break it down and actually do it. And heck, like you could even, you know, give yourself a little bit of like positive presence, you know, for if you reach, you know, £1,000 of saving, why don't you get a takeaway for yourself or buy some nice clothes? Like you'll obviously have other money to use in other ways, so you might as well reward yourself when you get to certain milestones of that goal, because that will also make you carry on further and make you want to achieve more. So that's it, guys. Those are my tips on how to best achieve your goal. I've used these in the past and I've really loved that mindset of working backwards, of, you know, visualizing yourself in the future and how you want to live, and then breaking it down, going backwards of how to actually achieve it. And also I find tracking, like I have loads of notebooks everywhere. I find that writing it down of what you want to achieve and then ticking it off has been incredibly helpful for me. I'm an incredibly new channel, so please subscribe, that would be amazing. And I post 2 videos every week on personal finance bits. So if that's your jam, please subscribe, please. Okay, cool. And I'll see you next week, guys. Okay, bye.